So far in this series on the psychology of the chakras, we have risen from the earth, through the water, through the fire, into the air, and now with the throat chakra vishuddha, we are going beyond, we're going into the ether, the quintessential fifth element. The psychology of the throat chakra goes beyond the limits of our daily experience. With anahata we entered the spiritual realm, but in vishuddha we go off the deep end. The relationship between mind and matter is flipped on its head, and with it, the aspect and meaning of everything about the world is changed completely. What this means and what this looks like from a psychological point of view is what we're going to be looking at in this episode of The Living Philosophy. The animal of vishuddha is the white elephant. This is a callback to the brown elephant of the first chakra, Muladhara. It is the brown elephant operating at a higher octave. At Muladhara, the elephant represented the solidity of earth. It was the undeniable force of the gravity of daily living and the demands of the body. Freud's reality principle. The elephant represents the undefiable grounding and immovable nature of the earth. Reality doesn't care if you believe in gravity or not, it just is. As Arnold Schwarzenegger once said about bodybuilding, the iron doesn't lie. You can talk a big game and you can fool other people. You might even fool yourself, but reality will ultimately prove your notions right or wrong. The solidity of the material world is contained in the symbol of the brown elephant. The white elephant has the same meaning, but instead of symbolizing physical, material substance, it symbolizes the substance of the psyche and the substance of the spirit. At the level of vishuddha, the realm of the psyche becomes the fundamental reality. The real world is no longer the world of matter, but the world of psyche in and of itself. The thing about anahata is that it is still grounded in the elephant of the root chakra. Your thoughts and feelings are derivative of the external material reality, but with the white elephant of vishuddha, this is reversed. In the everyday world and the lower levels of development, we take the physical material world as totally real. That's the number one rule of the game of life. Darwinian evolution, the laws of thermodynamics and of hunger demand that we pay attention to this daily reality. But at vishuddha, as I've said, there's something of a turnaround. There's a reversal. In this realm, the cart goes before the horse. Mind is over matter. The ultimate reality is the ethereal realm of mind and spirit. Jung gives the following example. You say, "Tomorrow we shall have a thunderstorm. It is not very likely at this time of year, but from all the meteorological data, you make the conclusion, though you yourself think it rather improbable. And tomorrow we do actually have a thunderstorm, and then you say, is it not marvellous that I came to such a conclusion? My feeling must be right." The ideas of the mind take on a life of their own. Synchronicity enters the scene. At anahata, you realize your inner world is important, that you must not neglect it, and you explore your feelings and your subjectivity. But at this point, you are still a Darwinian creature. You're still flesh and bones and exploring your biology through the medium of your psychology. Your exploration of the psyche is still bound by the great circumference of material reality. The cause for what happens in your emotional world is still external, still tied to material reality. At vishuddha, bizarre things begin to happen. This is the chakra of synchronicity. The world becomes a dream that you are deeply connected with and that reacts with you and to you. In his interview with Jordan Peterson, Tim Ferriss raises the subject of DMT, and Peterson talks about one of the foremost researchers who left the field.
I mean, Rick Strassman, he terrified himself right out of the DMT research, as far as I could tell, because all his subjects came back and said, well, I went somewhere else and saw aliens. It's like, well, it was a dream. No, sorry. Wasn't a dream, was way more real than any dream. In fact, it was actually more real than life. Well, what do you do with that? What do you do with
especially that? when it's every subject or almost every subject,
yeah, exactly.
And not one out of 30.
Yeah, exactly. No one knows what to do with that.
If you've ever gone through a plant medicine ceremony, then you probably tasted this aspect of vishuddha, not just during the ceremony, but in the weeks that follow the ceremony, when things seem to slot into place and synchronicity seem to crop up left, right, and center. This is a strange world of vishuddha when all of a sudden the most solid thing in the world, the most fundamental belief to a modern human, that the mind is an emergent property of matter, that matter is the fundamental thing, gets turned on its head. Now all of reality becomes dreamlike, deeply strange, like a simulation, something that is personally interacting and reacting to you. But the thing is that it's obviously not that simple. In a lot of ways, there's a really dangerous idea there for an individual to have, and it's something we see psychotic and paranoid people struggle with. And in reality, it has the potential to make your life a total misery. Nietzsche once wrote that what serves the higher type of men as nourishment or delectation must almost be poison for a very different and inferior type. That is how you have to approach development. Everything at the right time. Development is not egalitarian, it's not democratic, it's not all of us together at once. It is meeting a person where they are and taking the next step. The next step for you and the next step for me might be very different, but that's just the way that the game of life works. Don't worry about vishuddha when you're struggling with the waves of svadhisthana. Worry about the svadhisthana. Worry about the manipura. For most of us, it's just about getting a grip of the things down here in Muladhara and trying to sort out the next stage of Maslow's hierarchy. Wherever you are in your development, focus there. Take the next step that's right in front of you and try not to imitate that which is beyond. But once you do proceed into these higher levels of development, this is what you're going to be faced with. This is the experience of the world of the spirit, the world of mind, this is the true reality. That matter is an emergent property of spirit and not the other way around. If you want to get a deeper insight into this perspective, then I'd highly recommend Alan Watts' speech on the dream of life. I'll link it down below in the description. It's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and I would love if every human on the planet could listen to it. It's amazing. But yeah, obviously with Vishuddha, this is a bizarre and far out notion for us down in Muladhara to grasp, but we just have to look at the developmental map, see what it is, but not try to imitate it too much. Just know that that's what's ahead of us. These strange occurrences are the meaning and the essence of the Vishuddha way of life, of the essence of mind over matter. I'll leave you with two strange stories. Bizarre, not just for their substance, but for the similarities between the two of them. The first is a story about Joseph Campbell, while the second is a story from the practice of Carl Jung that I came across in a wonderful little article on synchronicity that I'll link in the description by one of our listeners in Trusted Coaching. So this first story about Joseph Campbell is one that Stan Groff heard straight from the horse's mouth at the Esalen Institute in California. Here's an amazing story that I heard from Joseph Campbell during one of his seminars at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur. He used to live in Greenwich Village in Manhattan on the 14th floor of a high-rise building. His study had two sets of windows. One was overlooking the Hudson River, which was a very beautiful view, and those windows were open much of the time. The other two windows faced 6th Avenue, and they were hardly ever opened. Joseph said those particular windows were only opened a couple of times during the 14 years he lived there. Joseph was, at the time of this story, working on his World Encyclopedia of Mythology, in particular the first volume called The Way of the Animal Powers, a comprehensive encyclopedia of shamanic mythologies of the world. And he was specifically working on a chapter on the mythology of the African Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. In that mythology, the praying mantis is a central heroic figure, so Joseph was surrounded by all these articles about the praying mantis and pictures of the praying mantis. Just as he was working on this, he suddenly had this completely irrational impulse to go and open one of the windows on the side that he never opened. So he does this and looks out of the window, and he automatically turned his head to the right without really knowing why. And there, on the 14th floor of the high-rise building, was a great specimen of praying mantis. And Joseph said the praying mantis gave him this meaningful look and then just continued up the wall. So that's a remarkable example of synchronicity, because you don't see many praying mantises in Lower Manhattan. The second story is told by Carl Jung in his book Synchronicity and a Causal Principle. A young woman I was treating had, at a critical moment, a dream in which she was given a golden scarab. While she was telling me this dream, I sat with my back to the closed window. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me like a gentle tapping. I turned around and saw a flying insect knocking against the window pane from the outside. I opened the window and caught the creature in the air as it flew in. It was the nearest analogy to a golden scarab one finds in our latitudes, a scarabid beetle, the common rose chafer Cetonia orata, which, contrary to its habits, had evidently felt the urge to get into a dark room at this particular moment. I must admit, nothing like it ever happened to me before or since. So that is Vishuddha, where the external world seems to act as a vehicle for the psyche and seems to be subject and second to the workings and designs of the psyche. That is the bizarre world we enter with the throat chakra. And yeah, that's everything that I wanted to cover on today's episode of The Living Philosophy. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'd love to hear from you down in the comments if you have any thoughts, insights, or feedback. Otherwise, I shall see you next time. Thank you for watching.